They need to send IShowSpeed out there as the American cultural envoy and fix this shit up, okay? He's gonna go link up with first link up with Evo, and then he's gonna link up with Arce, and then he's gonna unite the Mas party. Yeah, the coups are falling off.
Military forces. Bolivian President Arce addressed the protesters.
It fills us with bravery, courage to keep resisting, to keep on resisting any coup attempt. Because
how the F is Evo being blamed for this? He's not. I don't think he's being blamed for this.
Bolivia deserves its democracy, which has been won in the streets and with blood brothers and sisters.
Meanwhile, President Arce has sworn in new heads of the army.
What do you think of the coup in Turkey a few years back? Was that a fake coup by Erdogan that entrenches power? No, that was definite. I think that was an American-backed, Fethullah Gülen-backed coup for sure. Erdogan, of course, took advantage of it. I don't know how much he knew about it potentially happening, but he certainly took advantage of it. But that was very real. There is, like I've said before, there is a deep state in Turkey. That's where the deep state conversation comes from. There's a parallel government in Turkey beyond the deep state. Fethullah Gülen, the American CIA asset, quite literally had people all the way up in the court system, all the way up in the police force, all the way up in the military. That shit is that's not a joke. So for sure, those were very real fucking, bro, they were using fighter jets, which were getting refueled in American military bases. Something to think about. It's a very odd situation. They had fucking pilots, bro. So how'd that happen? How'd they get the F-16s to fire up and get refueled on American military bases? Anyway, yeah, Turkey has an actual deep state with a counter-guerrilla, not some made-up shit about turning people into femboys, yeah. Is that the Turkish dude who's currently hiding out in central Pennsylvania? Yes, in the Poconos. That is Fethullah Gülen. The risk of Arce could lose if he was found out doing a self-coup far outweighs any possible benefit. This theory doesn't make much sense, and I'm not even sure what the actual material benefit would even be. Yeah, I don't know either. I'm saying that that is a suspicion that people have. It just makes him look strong and wins him favors with the Morales defenders inside of the party base. If he's trying to become the guy and thwart Evo Morales personally. Are there any cases in history where false flags have been staged by the government for reasons like this? The only thing that even comes to mind is the 1957 coup attempt in Jordan, though that wasn't even a real attempt, that wasn't coordinated with the alleged coup plotters. It just seems far-fetched until we get actual evidence, and the general may as well have cut his losses short once he got to the palace, since the general strike was already called and all. Yeah, it could be literally it could be just the general being fucking annoyed and just kind of crazy. I don't know. But that's why I'm saying this did not feel like it was some CIA shit, especially because the possible CIA backed people literally immediately said this coup is not real. This is not our shit. This is stand down, please. Okay.
Navy and Air Force. For more, we go to Cochabamba, Bolivia. We're joined by Catherine Lederber, director of the Andean Information Network. Catherine, welcome back to Democracy Now! Can you explain what just took place on Wednesday in Bolivia?
Thanks, Amy. Well, it's very hard to explain. We had tanks filling the main plaza in front of the government palace. This all happened, a little bit after lunch at 1:30 p.m. This is after very strong statements from the top army commander, Zuniga, and this unexpected rush of tanks and of military personnel that really harked back to the 2019 coup that's still very fresh in Bolivia's memory. They forced their way into the political palace. Zuniga demanded the release of Coup, the 2019 coup political prisoners such as Fernando Camacho and Janine Áñez, made the obligatory reference to his testicles, always a part of a macho military move. And somehow the conflict within a number of hours.
I am straight up streaming the fucking debate tonight, okay? I'm streaming it. I'm streaming the debate live, okay? I'm streaming it. I'm streaming the debate.
Diffused, and Zuniga walked away and Arce swore in new military leaders. But this is a military that's accustomed to having coups. It's a country that's had more military coups than any other Latin American country. And we see here that the Bolivian armed forces aren't firmly entrenched in democracy still, and that the consequences of 2019 and the impunity that continues has really been corrosive here.
Catherine, if you could explain why this attempted military coup now, and what was the relationship between President Arce and the military chiefs?
Well, we're at a point in time where the Arce government's under a great deal of pressure. There's an economic crisis. The state lacks a lot of resources because of a great reduction in the income from oil and gas revenue, while the state has to continue to pay for imported petroleum at increasingly higher prices. So we have empty government coffers. We have a right wing that's discontent. We have a crisis with the Bolivian Constitutional Court extending its own mandate illegally, and that of the Supreme Court, and blocking judicial elections that are mandated by the Bolivian Constitution. You have the carryover from the 2019 coup, and really after that coup, although some military officers have been prosecuted and jailed, there hasn't been any restructuring of the armed forces. There hasn't been a fundamental change in vision. And I think that Arce, perhaps with the best intents, does not understand security issues very well. Remember that he was Morales' finance minister, and I don't think he's been particularly strategic in the choices that he's made for military commanders. And so you have an institution that appears to be not firmly under democratic control, a government that is feeling pressured and cornered. And at the same time, there's an intense conflict within the MAS party, a strong divide between Arce and...
Big L. Not cleaning house is a big L, okay? If a fucking right-wing reactionary coup occurs, you got to fucking clean house, okay? Here's a HasanAbi guarantee, all right? You got to clean house. You can't do that. You kidding me? Nope. No ands, ifs, or buts. You got to do that. You got to do that shit. 100%.
And his former boss, three-time President Evo Morales, that is also leading to greater uncertainty here in Bolivia.
Can you talk about what the general was alleging, that this was an auto golpe, right? Self-coup, that he was carrying out the wishes of Arce. How outrageous or reasonable is this?
Well, Amy, it's impossible to...
Would you execute Zuniga? No, you don't have to execute him. Maybe a little bit of re-education, maybe a little bit of re-education, make him work a little bit, you know what I mean? At a labor camp, that sort of thing. No exile. I don't like exile. I think exile is shitty. Then they always go to America. Fuck that. No, send him to the countryside. They need to build roads, No, I hate exile. I think exile is bullshit. Make them do community service. Like, what are you talking about? No, you got to execute them or they try again. True and on rule. No. Listen, as much as I respect Brace, successful re-education has occurred in Maoist China. Think about it. That's the method. I'm currently testing his Maoism. I don't think he's sufficiently Maoist. Yeah, the Puyi method. Exactly.
To say, it's a quite confusing situation. I've never actually seen a coup attempt that began at 1:30 and ended at the end of the Bolivian workday promptly at 6:30. Zuniga had made very strong threats about arresting Evo Morales, Arce's now political opponent.
I think the Belden program is revisionist. Yes, it's not sufficiently Maoist. That's all I'm going to say. If the Belden program believes in exile, then I'll say it. I'll be brave enough to say it. It's revisionist.
And it wasn't clear whether or not he had been fired. But no one saw this coming particularly. Suspicions arise because Zuniga, who was never a stellar officer,
exile sucks, dude. It doesn't fucking, you don't want these look at Pinochet, for example. Like, Pinochet literally escaped prosecution. Like, are you fucking kidding me? No, I don't think you should be able to go live in like Florida or England, okay? I don't think that that is like appropriate. And there's obvious examples of like exile not working with Napoleon. You need like, you know, you need rehabilitation. I'll use a liberal term for it. Okay? Look at the Dalai Lama. You literally have two examples coming out of China. Yeah, one example of successful rehabilitation, one example of exile not working.
Was handpicked for promotion to general and then army commander by Arce. They play basketball together. They have a close personal rapport, and he was perceived to be Arce's strongest ally within the Bolivian military. So it's not clear whether things soured or what exactly happened. But it was interesting because generally in a situation like this, bullets are fired to impede the military from coming into the State House. That didn't happen in this particular.
Yeah, the Sino-Soviet split has nothing on the Hasan-Belden split, the Hassan-Bray split, the Piker-Belden split. Yeah, Cuba exiled in Florida. Yeah, that's another L. Okay. You can't just like give up on your reactionaries. You can't just be like, yeah, make him someone else's problem, especially when that someone else is America. Okay, fuck no, no shot, dude. This is in-house problems. Okay, we're dealing with this shit in-house.
Case, and Zuniga was not arrested at the time. He walked away from the main plaza or drove.
Yeah, that's also weird as fuck, by the way. That's the other thing that I was like, this motherfucker, they let him go? They let him go, and he wasn't on the first flight out of Bolivia on a military plane directly to Florida? Are you kidding me? And you're going to tell me this was a CIA-backed coup? It's also weird that he just like, it's also weird that they just like let him walk out. Hey, sorry. Okay, let's let bygones be bygones. Like, what do you mean?
Away and was only arrested later that evening. So it's a very bizarre framework for a coup attempt. Zuniga's affirmations are problematic. I think we have to put them in the context of his position, but it's a very unusual form of coup attempt, and it's going to be very interesting to see how this plays out. There were threats of violence, but no actual violence. It'll be interesting to see in the coming days how this evolves.
You said earlier, Catherine, that President Arce was not so strategic in his choices of military chiefs. What is your assessment now of the people he's appointed?
I think it remains.
These plans are always built with deniability. If it worked, the U.S. would be back in the new government. This guy jumped the gun and they fucking flubbed it. Of course, the U.S. wouldn't claim it. What do you mean? They would still, the State Department would make statements like, we are very concerned with what's going on in Bolivia because the people demand democracy or some shit, though, even if it failed. Like, the State Department would come out and be like, it's very obvious that, like, there is discontent among the Bolivian population given Evo Morales' unconstitutional and undemocratic fourth-term presidential run. And the people of Bolivia spoke on this day. Like some shit like that, you know what I mean? They wouldn't just be like, yeah, this was a L, lol.
To be seen, I haven't been able to look into their particular military career, but you have a defense minister who was a Morales minister, but in another area. I don't see that the Arce administration is strong.
By the way, most of the things I've mentioned about like how the CIA attempts successful and unsuccessful coups is like directly seen with Juan Guaido. Juan Guaido literally came to America, and instead of like fucking campaigning in Venezuela, building a fucking solid base of support for himself in a time when there's so much fucking discontent and volatility as a consequence of like the dire economic circumstances that the Venezuelan population is facing, he fucking came to America and was like, you know what the Venezuelan people want? reaffirming our commitment to Israel, and also privatizing our oil industry. And it's like, okay, dude, like, yeah, sure. Definitely. That's what the people were yearning for. You know what I mean?
Strong suit is security issues or reform of the security forces. And I think there dramatically needs to be an intense, profound reform of both institutions that received payment in 2019 to disobey Morales and to support to a right-wing uprising. So we've had these inherited long-term problems that aren't being addressed. We're seeing cycles of coups throughout Bolivia's history, or cycles of military commanders that make assertions, may be fired, may be arrested, may be imprisoned, but we don't see profound change within the institution itself. And I think that's highly problematic. And I think that that's probably an issue in most Latin American countries.
So presidents across the political spectrum in Latin America condemned this attempted coup. Can you talk more about the role of the former president, Evo Morales, that he plays in the current politics of Bolivia, Catherine?
Yes, I think that the support from Latin American countries was crucial and it was rapid. I think it's important to highlight that a very bland, watered-down message came from the Biden administration. And of course, we're beginning to become used to that. Morales handpicked Arce, who was elected by an overwhelming majority in the 2020 elections after the violence, the incompetence, and the corruption of the interim Áñez government that was illegally put in by the military with the support of the Trump administration. But as Arce's administration has progressed, Morales has become an outspoken critic for a number of reasons. The perception, the MAS party was originally considered a coalition of grassroots organizations, social movements, unions that had direct input with the executive. And the perception from the Morales administration is that most of the Arce ministers are upper middle class men that are personal allies of Arce, but don't necessarily represent social movements. And in fact, when there have been protests about different ministers and requests from grassroots organizations that those ministers have been changed, Arce has maintained them in.
That's a zesty flag. Bolivian flag is sick. I also love the hats. It's awesome.
Power. So there's one key issue there. There's another key issue about the stigmatization of the Chapare coca growing zone by the Arce administration, tagging it again as the center of drug trafficking, as the U.S., the DEA.
Look at those, dude. Look at those fucking hats, dude. They're so dope.
Far-right governments have that has promoted a lot of friction.
I gotta pee.
Criticisms from Morales on the way that the Arce government has dealt with oil and gas administration, economic administration, the disappearance of dollars in the Bolivian economy, and fuel shortages that have affected the government. So there's been an impasse between the two sides of the MAS government that other progressive governments around the continent and the Grupo de Puebla have worked very, very hard to try to overcome. And this divide has become increasingly greater. It's something that's very worrisome as we come to the 2025 elections and the suggestion that the right may well come into power.
And so Morales' response to this coup and where you think it goes?
Well, it's interesting that Morales' response was one of the first responses. He was the first person or one of the few people originally to denounce a troop movement, an unexplained movement of troops in La Paz that was worrisome. And he also denounced a coup attempt, and he denounced it vigorously. And, and then Arce denounced the same thing. And so seeing the troop movement, seeing the tanks in the plaza, seeing the soldiers filing in, it was very, very worrisome, and Morales expressed those sentiments even before Arce. So I think that at that point in time, it's the first time they've agreed on anything in months.
And Catherine, before we end, if you could say, you hinted at this earlier in one of your responses, if you could explain first of all, how much support President Arce still has among people, and what the both class and physical divides are, the highlands versus the lowlands, poor versus rich, in terms of support for President Arce, and perhaps also some who support the military.
Well, I would say that there's very little popular support for the military in Bolivia. I mean, they poll very badly. They poll even worse after coup attempts. The same is true for the Bolivian police force. This was something that I don't perceive had any popular backing. You know, the Bolivian citizenry do not want to return to violence. Gross.
Yeah, they need to send Isho Speed out there as the American cultural envoy and fix this shit up, okay? He's gonna go link up with Evo, and then he's gonna link up with Arce, and then he's gonna unite the Mas party.
Human rights violations and states of siege. But Arce is facing a lot of difficulty, also about the not calling out or denouncing the High Court's self-extension of their mandate, something that's completely illegal, and then having the Constitutional Court rule in favor of Arce is something that's been a great problem signaled by the other side of Mas, by justice experts, and even by the opposition. So, you know, Arce is in a very delicate position. He perhaps has received a respite from the pressure for 6 weeks, perhaps, with the relief of the population that democracy has been maintained. But it's a fragile democracy. And I think that in the long run, this incident will bolster Arce in the short term, but demonstrates a vulnerability that we should all be concerned about in the long run.
Catherine Lederber, we want to thank you so much for being with us, director of the Andean.
Who would Bolivia prefer lead? Probably a lot of Latin American countries are susceptible to strongmen, like charismatic strongmen. It is a little bit of a weakness in terms of like long-term continuation of any kind of ideological project. This happened with Chavez in Venezuela as well. So I would assume that, I mean, I don't actually know. I genuinely know. I genuinely don't know. Sorry. But I suspect it's probably Evo Morales, but machismo trumps a lot of thinking in Latin America. Yeah. I mean, but it's not just like, it's not machismo, but like, it's not just strongmen in the sense that like, in the way that you understand, like a Vladimir Putin type. I mean, like a charismatic leader, and Evo certainly is. So I think that, that is, that, I mean, I don't know. A lot of these guys personally end up not cultivating like a decent continuation plan